Captain Lee Taman stared at the massive space station floating before his ship. Nexus Prime looked like a giant crystal flower made of metal and glass. Its arms stretched out in all directions, each one bigger than Earth's largest cities. Lights moved along its surface like glowing rivers. He had seen pictures before, but being here in person made his chest feel tight with wonder. "Captain, we're getting a docking signal," said his communications officer. The young woman's voice shook slightly. Everyone on the bridge felt nervous. This was humanity's first official invitation to meet the Galactic Council. "Take us in slowly," Lee Taman ordered. His ship, the Soul's Pride, was small compared to the alien vessels around them. Some ships looked like smooth eggs. Others had sharp edges and wings. A few seemed to be made of living metal that moved and shifted. All of them were much larger than any human ship. Behind him, Ambassador Park Ji-woo stood quietly. She wore her best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with gold trim. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat style. She looked calm, but Lee Taman knew her well enough to see the tension in her shoulders. 30 years we've been listening to their radio signals," Park Ji-woo said softly. 30 years of learning their languages and customs. And now they finally want to talk to us." Lee Taman nodded. Humans had been expanding into space for 50 years now. They had built colonies on 3 different star systems. They thought they were alone until they picked up alien transmissions. Since then, Earth scientists had worked day and night to understand the galaxy they lived in. The docking process took 2 hours. Alien technology guided their ship into a berth designed for vessels much different from human designs. When they finally stopped, Lee Taman felt the artificial gravity shift. The aliens used a different type of gravity control. "Remember the briefing," Park Ji-woo told her small team. "Bow slightly to the Velthari. Don't make direct eye contact with the Christek. Keep your hands visible to the Zephyrians, and whatever happens, stay calm." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Sweet-smelling air flowed in. It reminded Lee Taman of flowers he couldn't name. 2 alien figures waited for them. One was tall and thin with silver skin and 4 arms. The other looked like a walking tree made of blue crystal. "Ambassador Park Ji-woo of Earth," the silver alien said in perfect English. Its voice sounded like music. "I am Guide Nexal. This is Christek Node 12. We will escort you to the council chamber." They walked through corridors that seemed to grow from the walls themselves. The ceiling showed a view of space that changed as they moved. Other aliens passed by, some floating, others walking on different numbers of legs. A few seemed to be made of pure energy held in glass containers. Park Ji-woo tried not to stare, but it was hard. Each alien was more amazing than the last. Some had fur and colors that didn't exist on Earth. Others had skin that showed pictures like living tattoos. One group communicated by changing the color of their bodies in patterns too fast to follow. "The council is very excited to meet your species," Guide Nexal said as they walked. "It has been many cycles since we welcomed new members." "Members?" Park Ji-woo asked. "Of course. All intelligent species in this galaxy belong to the council. It ensures peace and prosperity for everyone." They reached a massive door that opened without sound. The council chamber beyond took Park Ji-woo's breath away. It was shaped like a bowl with seats rising up in circles. Each seat was designed for different types of bodies. The center held a platform surrounded by a dome of energy that sparkled with every color. 12 different types of aliens sat in the chamber. Park Ji-woo recognized most of them from her studies. The Velthari Empress sat on a throne that floated above the others. Her people looked like humans but with pale blue skin and silver hair. They had once ruled half the galaxy through war. The aquatic delegates lived in large tanks of water. Their fish-like bodies moved gracefully as they watched the humans enter. The Zephyrians looked like giant butterflies with arms and legs. Their wings showed patterns that changed with their emotions. "Humans of Earth," the Empress's voice filled the chamber. She spoke without moving her lips. Her words came directly into their minds. "We welcome you to the Galactic Council. You have grown quickly in your small corner of space. This shows promise." Park Ji-woo stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, we are honored by your invitation. Earth is eager to learn about our neighbors in the galaxy." "Yes, neighbors," the Empress smiled, but it didn't look friendly. "That is why we have called you here. Your expansion has been noticed. 3 star systems in 50 years. Very fast for such a young species." A delegate that looked like a giant mantis made of gold clicked its claws together. "Too fast," it said. "Young species often make mistakes. Dangerous mistakes. Which is why the Council offers protection. added a floating sphere covered in eyes. "We have seen many species destroy themselves through careless expansion. We prevent such tragedies." The Empress gestured, and images appeared in the air above the platform. They showed human colonies, ships, and cities. The detail was amazing. They had been watching Earth much longer than humans realized. "We offer you membership in the Council as a protected species," the Empress announced. "You will be allowed to keep 2 of your 3 colonies. The 3rd will be evacuated for your own safety. You will receive basic trade rights and access to some of our older technologies. In return, you will pay tribute to help maintain galactic peace. You will limit your expansion to 1 new world every 100 years, and only with Council approval." Park Ji-woo felt her heart sink. This wasn't membership. This was slavery with pretty words. "Your military will be limited to defense only," continued a delegate that looked like a walking crystal tree. "Council peacekeepers will monitor your space to ensure compliance. Any violations will result in immediate intervention for your protection." "We understand this seems restrictive," the Empress said, her mind voice taking on a gentler tone, "but you must understand young species are dangerous to themselves and others. We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 3,000 years through careful control. We know what is best." The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to Park Ji-woo. She felt the weight of her entire species resting on her shoulders. These aliens had technology that seemed like magic. Their ships could probably destroy Earth's entire fleet without effort. They offered survival even if it meant giving up freedom. Lee Tae-min watched his friend's face. He saw her thinking, weighing options, considering the impossible choice between submission and destruction. Park Ji-woo straightened her shoulders. She looked directly at the Empress, breaking one of the rules of diplomacy she had been taught. "No." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Several aliens made sounds of surprise. The Christek delegates flashed colors that hurt to look at. The Empress's blue skin darkened to deep purple. "No," the Empress repeated. "You refuse our protection?" "We refuse your chains," Park Ji-woo said clearly. "Humanity will make its own choices about its future. We came here hoping for friendship and partnership. Instead, you offer us a cage with golden bars." The answer is no. The silence that followed was deafening. In 3,000 years, no species had ever refused the Council's offer. The concept was so foreign that several delegates seemed unable to process what they had heard. The Empress rose from her floating throne. Her mental voice turned cold and sharp. "Then you choose destruction. So be it." The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 3,000 years, a species had said no to the Galactic Council. On every world and every space station, aliens gathered around communication devices to hear the impossible story repeated again and again. Velthari military commander Kexithan stood in his flagship's war room, staring at holographic displays of human space. His blue skin had turned almost white with shock. Around him, his officers whispered among themselves in their musical language. "Show me their military strength again," he ordered. The displays changed to show human ships and weapons. Kexton studied them with growing confidence. Human vessels were tiny compared to Velthari warships. Their largest ship was barely 2 kilometers long, while his flagship stretched for 20 kilometers. Human weapons seemed to use simple kinetic energy. Metal projectiles fired at high speed. Their armor looked like basic steel and ceramic composites. "They still use chemical rockets for some of their ships," noted his intelligence officer, a young female named Nixara. "Their faster-than-light drives are crude compared to ours, and they have no energy shields at all." Kexton relaxed. The humans were brave, he would give them that. But bravery without strength was just suicide with extra steps. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Our scouts count approximately 200 vessels across their 3 systems. Most are cargo ships or small patrol craft. Perhaps 30 could be considered warships." 30 ships, Kexton repeated, shaking his head. "The Empress wants a quick lesson taught. I think 50 of our vessels will be more than enough. We'll blockade their systems until they surrender. Minimal casualties, maximum humiliation." On the other side of the galaxy, Zephyrian Trade Minister Velnon was having a very different reaction. His butterfly-like wings showed patterns of deep concern as he met with other trade leaders in the floating city of Erthis. "You don't understand," he said, his voice carried by the wind that always moved through Zephyrian buildings. "This isn't just about one stubborn species. If humans can refuse council membership, What stops others from doing the same? Trade Representative Falwin's wings shifted to show confusion. But who would want to leave the council? We provide safety, technology, markets, at a price, Velnon reminded him. We control their expansion, their technology, their trade routes. We take 30% of their resources as tribute. Many species only stay because they fear what happens to those who leave. But no one has ever left, Falwin protested. Because no one has ever been strong enough to survive outside the council, Velnon said. But what if humans are different? What if they can thrive without us? Other species will start asking questions. Falwin's wings turned pale yellow with worry. The Zephyrian economy depended on controlling trade routes between council worlds. If species started making their own trade agreements, bypassing council regulations, it would destroy everything they had built. In the crystal caves of Christek Prime, the hive mind processed the human rejection with cold logic. Node 7, the consciousness assigned to military calculations, ran thousands of scenarios through its networked brain. The math was simple. Humans had primitive technology and small numbers. A standard containment fleet could isolate their systems within days. Once cut off from resources and trade, they would surrender quickly. The Christek had seen it happen before with species that tried to resist council authority. But something felt wrong about the calculations. Node 7 reviewed the data again and again. Human expansion had been too fast, too organized. Young species usually struggled to manage even one colony world. Humans had successfully established 3 thriving systems in just 50 years. Node 7 shared its concerns with the greater hive mind, but the response was dismissive. The humans were simply lucky, other nodes concluded. Some species had brief periods of success before reality caught up with them. Meanwhile, on Earth, the news of Ambassador Park Ji-woo's rejection had reached every human settlement. In the capital city of New Geneva, President Choi Hai-wan called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council. How long before they attack? She asked Admiral Kim Do-hyun, the head of Earth's military forces. The admiral was a calm man with gray hair and steady eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. Based on their past actions with other species, probably within days, they'll want to make an example of us quickly. Are we ready? President Choi asked. Kim Do-hyun smiled slightly. We've been ready for 30 years. The question is whether they're ready for us. Around the table sat the leaders of humanity's greatest secret. While aliens had been watching their visible colonies and ships, humans had been busy with projects hidden in the dark spaces between stars. Every transmission they had intercepted, every piece of alien technology they had found floating in space, every careful observation of alien behavior had been studied and analyzed. Dr. Song Hyo-jin, Earth's chief technology officer, activated a holographic display. We've been reverse engineering alien technology since we first detected their signals. Our ships may look primitive on the outside, but inside they use quantum tunneling drives, adaptive armor, and weapon systems the aliens have never seen. How many ships do we really have? President Choi asked. The aliens know about 50 ships in our visible fleet, Admiral Kim replied. They don't know about the other 400 hidden throughout 17 different star systems. The president leaned back in her chair. 17 systems? I thought we only had 3 colonies. We do, the admiral said. The other 14 locations are military outposts, research stations, and supply depots, all hidden using stealth technology we developed from studying alien sensor systems. They're invisible unless you know exactly where to look. On the water world of Aquatica, the Council's aquatic delegates swam in deep circles, their equivalent of pacing nervously. Elder Myrthios, oldest of their kind, had lived through the last time a species had seriously challenged the Council. That was 2,000 years ago, and it had ended badly for everyone involved. The young ones don't remember, Myrthios told his advisors. They think Council power has always been absolute. But I remember the Kethvar rebellion. I remember how much blood filled the space between stars. But the Kethvar were strong, replied advisor Nilthos. They had energy weapons and shielded ships. These humans are barely out of their gravity wells. Myrthios made a sound like bubbling water, the aquatic equivalent of disagreement. The Kethvar were strong in obvious ways. They built bigger guns and thicker armor. The humans, there's something different about them. Did you see their ambassador's face when she said no? She wasn't afraid. She was confident. Confident in what? Nilthos asked. That's what worries me, Myrthios replied. Back on Nexus Prime, the Velthari Empress met with her closest advisors in a private chamber. Her silver hair floated around her head as if moved by an invisible wind, a sign of her agitation. This insult cannot stand, she declared. Other species must see what happens to those who refuse council protection. We will make an example of these humans that will be remembered for 1,000 years. Her military advisor, General Zixtha, bowed deeply. The containment fleet is already being assembled, Your Majesty. Commander Kexthan assures me that human resistance will collapse within hours of our arrival. Make sure it does, the Empress said. But I want prisoners. Bring their leaders to me alive. I want them to kneel before the council and beg for the mercy they rejected. It will be done, Your Majesty. The Empress turned to look out at the stars through her chamber's crystal walls. 3,000 years of carefully maintained order were being threatened by a species that barely knew how to leave their own solar system. It was unthinkable. It was impossible. It had to be stopped. What none of them knew was that humanity had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. While aliens saw primitive ships and basic technology, humans had been carefully crafting an image of weakness while building strength in the shadows. Captain Yoon Soo-min sat in the command chair of the stealth destroyer Incheon's Fury, hidden in the dark space between Earth and Mars. Her ship was completely invisible to alien sensors, just like 49 others positioned throughout the solar system. Captain, her communications officer reported, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. The alien fleet is arriving. Yoon Soo-min had trained for this moment her entire career. She was young for a ship captain, but she had earned her position through skill and dedication. Now she would test both against the might of an ancient galactic empire. Send the signal to all hidden units, she ordered. Operation Freedom is now active. Throughout human space, invisible ships powered up their weapons and began moving into position. The aliens thought they were coming to discipline a weak, isolated species. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The Velthari containment fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of human space, with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. 50 warships arranged themselves in attack formation, their hulls gleaming silver in the light of distant stars. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien engineering, bristling with energy weapons and protected by shields that could turn aside asteroid impacts. Commander Kexthan stood on his flagship's bridge, watching displays that showed human space spread out before him. 3 star systems, dozens of worlds, and a pathetically small defensive fleet moving to intercept his forces. They're actually going to fight, said his second-in-command, Officer Tilinara, with amusement in her voice. How brave. How pointless. Kexthan studied the human formation approaching his fleet. 30 ships at most, arranged in a simple defensive line. Their hulls looked rough and primitive compared to the smooth perfection of Velthari design. No energy shields flickered around them. No advanced weapon arrays were visible on their surfaces. They're hailing us, reported his communications officer. Put them on screen, Kexthan ordered. The main display showed the bridge of a human ship. Captain Lee Tae-min appeared wearing a simple military uniform. Behind him, his crew worked at stations that looked like they belonged in a museum compared to Velthari technology. Commander Kexthan, Lee Tae-min said, his voice steady despite facing impossible odds. I am Captain Lee Tae-min of the Human Defense Force. You are entering human territorial space without permission. Please state your intentions. Kexthan laughed, a sound like silver bells ringing. Captain, I am here to accept your surrender. Your leader's childish refusal of council protection has consequences. Stand down your ships and prepare to be boarded. I'm afraid I can't do that, Lee Tae-min replied. Humanity has chosen its path. We will defend our freedom. With those ships. Kexthan gestured at his displays showing the primitive human vessels. Captain, my flagship alone could destroy your entire fleet. Don't throw away lives needlessly. Lee Tae-min's expression didn't change. Commander, you should know something about humans. We don't give up easily, and we've had 30 years to prepare for this conversation. Something in the human's tone made Kexthan pause. There was no fear in the captain's voice, no desperation. If anything, he sounded almost eager. Your 30 years of preparation have produced this? Kexthan waved at the small human fleet. Captain, be reasonable. Oh, we're being very reasonable, Lee Tae-min said. In fact, let me show you just how reasonable we can be. The transmission ended. Kexthan stared at the blank screen for a moment, then shook his head. Human bravery was admirable, but it wouldn't save them from superior firepower. All ships prepare for battle, he ordered. Minimal destruction. We want prisoners, not debris. That's when the universe changed around them. Space itself seemed to ripple as dozens of new contacts appeared on every sensor screen. Ships materialized from nowhere, surrounding the Velthari fleet on all sides. Not the primitive vessels they had been tracking, but sleek, dangerous-looking warships that hurt to look at directly. Where did they come from? Tilnara gasped, staring at displays that showed impossible readings. Stealth technology, Kexthon whispered. But that's impossible. Humans don't have stealth technology. More ships appeared, then more. Within minutes, the Velthari fleet found itself outnumbered 3-1 by vessels that had been completely invisible to their sensors. Captain Yoon Sumin smiled as her ship, the Inchen's Fury, dropped its stealth field. Around her, the bridge hummed with activity as her crew prepared for the fight they had trained for their entire careers. Signal from Admiral Kim Do-hyun, her communications officer reported. Put him through, Yoon ordered. The Admiral's face appeared on her screen. He looked calm, as if he were discussing the weather instead of commanding the largest military operation in human history. Captain Yoon, how are our guests reacting to the surprise party? He asked. They seem shocked, sir, Yoon replied, watching her displays as alien ships frantically tried to reorganize their formation. I don't think they were expecting this many party favors. Excellent. Begin Phase 2. Throughout the battle zone, human ships began moving with precision that amazed the alien observers. They didn't charge forward in angry waves like young species usually did. Instead, they moved like pieces on a chessboard, each ship knowing exactly where it needed to be. Dr. Song Hyo-jin watched the battle from Earth's command center, surrounded by displays showing the engagement from every angle. For 30 years, she had worked on the technologies that were now being revealed to the galaxy. Quantum tunneling drives that made ships nearly impossible to track. Adaptive armor that learned from each hit and adjusted its properties. Weapons that used principles the aliens had never encountered. Neural disruptors are showing green across all ships, reported her technical assistant. Alien technology is responding as predicted. The human weapons weren't designed to destroy. Instead, they sent out fields of energy that interfered with alien computer systems and neural networks. Ships that were hit found their controls becoming sluggish. Crew members experienced confusion and disorientation. Commander Kexton gripped his command chair as his flagship shuddered under impact from human weapons. But instead of the explosive destruction he expected, his ship's systems simply began shutting down one by one. Weapons offline, reported his tactical officer. Shields. Failing, added another voice. Life support switching. To backup power, called a third. What are they doing to us? Kexthon demanded. Before anyone could answer, human ships were alongside his vessel, attaching to the hull with magnetic clamps. Through his viewports, he could see armored figures moving across his ship's surface. They're boarding us, Tilnara said in disbelief. But their technology is primitive. How are they cutting through our hull so easily? Kexthon didn't have an answer. Nothing about this battle made sense. Human weapons that disabled instead of destroyed, human ships that appeared from nowhere, human tactics that seemed to anticipate every alien countermove. In the command center of another human ship, Captain Park Min-seo coordinated the boarding operations. Her voice was calm and professional as she spoke to the assault teams. Remember minimum casualties, she ordered. These are prisoners, not enemies. Treat them with respect. The Velthari crew of Kexthon's flagship expected the worst when human soldiers broke through their airlocks. They had heard stories of what young species did to prisoners. Violence, torture, revenge for perceived wrongs. Instead, they found themselves facing soldiers who moved with discipline and purpose. The humans were polite, even helpful, as they secured the ship and gathered the crew. Commander Kexthon? One of the human soldiers asked, approaching the bridge. I'm Sergeant Cho Young-ho. You and your crew are now prisoners of the Human Defense Force. You will be treated according to interstellar law and returned to your people unharmed. Kexthon stared at the young human in amazement. You're not going to execute us? Sir? Sergeant Cho looked confused. Why would we do that? You were following orders. We don't punish soldiers for doing their duty. Around the battle zone, the same scene played out on ship after ship. The Velthari fleet, pride of one of the galaxy's most powerful empires, was being systematically captured by a species they had dismissed as primitive children. Admiral Kim Do-hyun stood in his command center, Watching reports flow in from across the engagement zone. 43 alien ships captured. 7 escaped. 0 human casualties. 0 alien casualties, sir? His communications officer called. We're receiving priority signals from 17 different alien species. They all want to know what just happened here. The Admiral smiled. For 30 years, humanity had planned for this moment. They had studied alien technology, learned alien weaknesses, and prepared for the day when the galaxy would finally see what humans could really do. Broadcast on all frequencies, he ordered. Send this message to every world, every ship, every species in the galaxy. The communication went out on every known frequency, translated into hundreds of alien languages. The message was simple, direct, and completely unlike anything the galaxy had heard before. This is Admiral Kim Do-hyun of the Human Defense Force. Today, the Galactic Council sent a fleet to force humanity into submission. Instead, we have demonstrated that submission is not in our nature. We have captured most of their ships and crews. All prisoners will be treated with honor and returned safely to their homes. He paused, letting that sink in across the galaxy. But let this be clear to all who are listening. Humanity rejects the Council's terms. We reject their authority over our future. We choose freedom, and we have the strength to defend that choice. We invite any species that values liberty to join us in building a better galaxy, one based on cooperation, not domination. The message ended, leaving space filled with the sound of a galaxy holding its breath. On Nexus Prime, the Velthari Empress received the news in stunned silence. Her most powerful fleet had been defeated by a species that shouldn't have been able to challenge a single ship, let alone 50. But worse than the military defeat was what it represented. For 3,000 years, the Council's power had been absolute because everyone believed it was absolute. Now, for the first time, the captured Velthari crews expected the worst as they were brought aboard human ships. Stories told throughout the galaxy spoke of young species as savage and unpredictable. Surely these humans would seek revenge for the attempted invasion. Instead, Commander Kexton found himself in what could only be described as comfortable quarters. The room was clean and well lit, with a bed, desk, and even a small viewing port showing the stars outside. A human guard stood at the door, but he seemed more like a helpful guide than a jailer. "Commander," the guard said politely, "Dr. Lee Na-young will be here soon to speak with you. Is there anything you need? Food, water, medical attention?" Kexton stared at the young human in confusion. "You're treating us as honored guests, not prisoners." The guard looked genuinely puzzled. "Sir, you're prisoners of war, but that doesn't mean we treat you badly. Would you like some coffee? It's a human drink that many aliens find interesting." Before Kexton could answer, the door opened and a human woman entered. She was middle-aged with kind eyes and graying hair. She wore a simple uniform with the symbol of a dove carrying an olive branch. "Commander Kexton," she said, bowing slightly in the Velthari style. "I am Dr. Lee Na-young, xenobiologist and diplomatic advisor." "May I sit?" Kexton gestured to a chair, still trying to understand what was happening. "Doctor, I must ask, why are we being treated so well? My fleet came here to conquer your people." Dr. Lee sat down and smiled sadly. "Commander, you came here because your leaders ordered you to. From what we know of Velthari culture, refusing orders from the Empress would mean death for you and your family. How can we blame you for that? But we threatened your colonies, your people. Yes, and we defended ourselves. That's over now. You're safe, your crew is safe, and you'll go home to your families when this is resolved." Dr. Lee pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. "May I record our conversation? I'm trying to understand your people better." For the next several hours, Kexton found himself in the strangest conversation of his life. Dr. Lee didn't interrogate him about military secrets or demand information about Velthari defenses. Instead, she asked about his childhood, his family, his hopes for the future. She wanted to know what Velthari art looked like, what foods they enjoyed, what games their children played. "Doctor," Kexton finally asked, "why do you care about these things?" "Because we're going to be neighbors for a very long time," Dr. Lee replied. "The old system where the Council controlled everything is breaking down. In the future, our species will need to work together as equals. That's only possible if we understand each other." Similar conversations were happening on ships throughout the captured fleet. Human doctors treated wounded aliens with the same care they would give their own people. Human technicians worked alongside alien crews to repair damaged systems. Human cooks prepared meals that met the dietary needs of a dozen different species. The aliens had never experienced anything like it. In their galaxy, the strong dominated the weak. Prisoners were tools to be used or problems to be eliminated. The idea that captors would genuinely care about their captives' welfare was completely foreign. Word of the human victory spread through the galaxy at light speed. On the Council Station Nexus Prime, emergency sessions ran day and night as representatives struggled to understand what had happened. The Velthari Empress paced her private chambers like a caged predator. Her silver hair whipped around her head as her anger grew. 50 ships, she repeated for the 100th time. 50 of our best ships defeated by primitive savages. Her military advisor, General Zixtha, stood at attention nearby. His normally proud bearing was bent with shame. Your Majesty, our intelligence was clearly incomplete. The humans have technology we didn't know about. Technology? The Empress snapped. This isn't about technology. This is about embarrassment, about looking weak in front of the entire galaxy. Do you know what happens to empires that look weak, General? Yes, Your Majesty. They fall. They are consumed by their enemies and forgotten by history. The Empress stopped pacing and turned to face her advisor. Double our military budget. Call up the reserves. I want 1,000 ships ready to burn every human world to ash. Your Majesty, the general said carefully. Perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans did return our crews unharmed. They seem willing to talk. The Empress's eyes blazed with fury. Negotiation? With rebels? With species that refuse our authority? Never. We will crush them completely, and every species in the galaxy will remember what happens to those who defy the Council. But while the Empress planned revenge, other species were drawing different conclusions from the human victory. On the water world of Aquatica, Elder Myrthios called a secret meeting of his most trusted advisors. The humans have done something impossible, he told them as they swam in the deep currents of the planning chambers. They defeated a Council fleet without destroying it. They captured enemies without harming them. In 3,000 years of galactic history, nothing like this has ever happened. What does it mean? Asked Advisor Nilthos. It means the humans fight differently than anyone else, Myrthios replied. Most species fight to destroy their enemies. The humans fight to protect their freedom. There's a difference, and it's important. On the crystal world of the Zephyrians, Trade Minister Velnon was having his own crisis of faith. His butterfly wings showed patterns of deep thought as he met with representatives from dozens of smaller species. The economic implications are staggering, he told them. If the humans can survive outside Council control, other species will want to try the same thing. Our entire trade system depends on everyone staying in line. But what if the human way is better? Asked a representative from the Phoenix, a species of small fox-like aliens. What if voluntary trade is more profitable than forced tribute? Velnon's wings shifted to show uncertainty. It was a question he didn't want to answer because he suspected the reply would change everything. Meanwhile, humanity was busy proving that their victory hadn't been luck. Construction ships appeared seemingly from nowhere, building a massive space station at the edge of human space. The structure rose with impossible speed, its design unlike anything in the galaxy. Dr. Song Hyo-jin supervised the construction from the engineering command ship. Her teams had spent decades designing the station, using a combination of human innovation and adapted alien technology. It would serve as both a fortress and a symbol, proof that humanity could build as well as fight. Neural pattern stabilizers are online, reported her chief engineer. The station's AI is learning from every alien ship that approaches. It will be able to communicate with any species in the galaxy within days. Defensive systems? Dr. Song asked. Better than anything the Council has ever seen. But more importantly, our diplomatic facilities are ready. We can host representatives from any species no matter their environmental needs. The station was named New Harmony, and its existence sent shockwaves through the galactic community. It wasn't just that humans had built it so quickly, it was that they had built it as a meeting place, not a fortress. The design spoke of cooperation and openness, not domination and control. Admiral Kim Do-hyun stood in New Harmony's main command center, watching as ships from across the galaxy approached the station. Some came openly, flying diplomatic flags. Others tried to remain hidden, sneaking close to observe this new human creation. Admiral, his communications officer reported, We're receiving contact requests from 47 different species. They all want to establish diplomatic relations. 47? The Admiral repeated. How many are council members? 31, sir. 16 are independent species that have never joined the council. Admiral Kim smiled. The galaxy was full of species that had remained independent by hiding in remote systems or dangerous regions of space. Now they were coming forward, curious about these humans who had openly defied the council and survived. Open channels to all of them, he ordered, but prioritize the independents. They've been alone for too long. The first to arrive was a delegation from the Tauren, a species of large, peaceful herbivores who had been hiding in the galactic rim for centuries. Their ship was old but well-maintained, built for long journeys through empty space. Ambassador Tornath, the Tauren leader, was nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin like brown leather. He moved slowly and spoke in a deep, rumbling voice that conveyed great wisdom. Humans, he said as he met Admiral Kim in New Harmony's reception bay. My people have watched from the darkness for 1,000 years. We left the galaxy's center because we could not accept council rule. We thought we were the only ones who valued freedom over security. You were never alone, Admiral Kim replied. You just didn't know where to find friends. Over the following days, New Harmony filled with representatives from species that had been scattered across the galaxy. Some were refugees from council authority. Others were young civilizations that had been ignored because they weren't worth conquering. A few were ancient peoples who had voluntarily retreated from galactic politics. But the most interesting visitors were the council species themselves. They came secretly at first, single ships claiming to be conducting research or surveys. Then larger groups began arriving. 6 months after humanity's first victory, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. New Harmony Station bustled with activity as species from across the galaxy came to see what the humans had built. Trade agreements were signed daily between worlds that had never been allowed to interact under council rule. Technology and culture flowed freely between willing partners, but the Velthari Empress was not willing to accept this new reality. In the massive shipyards orbiting the Velthari homeworld, a fleet unlike any in galactic history was taking shape. 2,000 warships of every class, from nimble destroyers to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed entire space stations. The Empress had called in favors, made threats, and promised rewards to assemble this force. This will end the human rebellion once and for all, she declared to the assembled fleet commanders in her throne room. We will burn their stations, destroy their colonies, and scatter their people across the galaxy as a warning to anyone else who thinks they can defy council authority. General Zixta stood before the throne, his blue skin pale with worry. Your Majesty, intelligence suggests the humans have gained allies. Several species have joined their alliance. A few cowards and misfits, the Empress dismissed. Nothing that can stand against the full might of loyal council members. But the general's concern was well-founded. In the months since New Harmony's construction, 17 species had formally joined what was being called the Free Alliance. Some were small independent worlds that had always resisted council control. Others were council members who had secretly voted to leave despite the risks. The most surprising addition was the Aquatic Federation. Elder Murthios had convinced his people that the time for hiding was over. If the galaxy was going to change, they wanted to help guide that change rather than simply react to it. Admiral Kim Do-Yun stood in New Harmony's expanded command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing ship movements throughout the galaxy. The approaching Velthari fleet was impossible to hide. 2,000 ships moving together created energy signatures, visible from systems away. They're not even trying to be subtle, observed Captain Yoon Soo-min, now serving as the Admiral's tactical advisor. It's like they want the entire galaxy to see them coming. Maybe they do, the Admiral replied. This isn't just about defeating us. It's about making an example that will terrify other species back into submission. Will it work? Admiral Kim smiled grimly. That depends on what happens when they get here. The Free Alliance fleet gathered near New Harmony was smaller than the approaching Velthari force, but it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships flew alongside aquatic vessels that looked like living coral. Tauren cargo ships had been converted into mobile defense platforms. Phoenix fighters danced around massive Christek constructs that had chosen freedom over the hive mind's collective will. President Choi Hai-wan arrived at New Harmony aboard the new flagship Soul's Promise, the most advanced ship humanity had ever built. As she walked through the station's corridors, she marveled at the diversity around her. Aliens who had been enemies for centuries worked together, sharing meals and stories. "It's beautiful," she told Admiral Kim as they met in his office. "Everything we hoped for when we first said no to the Council." "It may not survive the next few days," the Admiral warned. "The Empress isn't coming to negotiate. She's coming to destroy everything we've built. Then we'll have to convince her that destruction isn't in her best interest," President Choi replied. The Velthari fleet arrived at the edge of human space 3 days later, their ships arranged in perfect formation like a silver spear pointed at the heart of the Free Alliance. The Empress herself commanded the fleet from her personal dreadnought, a ship so large it had its own gravity well. "Humans of Earth," her message echoed across all frequencies. "You have defied Council authority for the last time. Surrender now and face exile. Resist and face extinction. You have 1 hour to decide." The reply came not from New Harmony, but from Captain Yoon Soo-min aboard the Soul's Promise, Empress Zil-Ana. Yoon's voice was calm and respectful. "We appreciate your offer, but we must decline. However, we have a counter-proposal. Would you be willing to hear it?" On her bridge, the Empress laughed coldly. "You wish to negotiate? After all this time, you finally understand your position?" "Actually," Yoon replied, "we'd like to show you something. With your permission, we'd like to transmit some images to your fleet." Curious despite herself, the Empress agreed, her screens filled with views of New Harmony's interior. She saw Velthari citizens working alongside humans and other species. She saw families of different races playing together in the station's parks. She saw trade goods from 100 worlds being exchanged freely. "What is this?" the Empress demanded. "This is what we're fighting for," Yoon explained. "Not human dominance, but everyone's freedom. Those are your people on our station, Empress. They came here voluntarily. They chose to leave your empire because they found something better." The Empress's silver skin darkened with rage. "Traitors and criminals. Children and artists, teachers and engineers," Yoon corrected. "People who wanted to choose their own futures. Your Majesty, you can destroy this station, but you cannot destroy what it represents. The idea of freedom is spreading throughout the galaxy. Will you spend the rest of your reign trying to kill an idea?" "Watch me!" the Empress snarled and ordered her fleet to attack. But as the Velthari ships moved forward, something unexpected happened. Other fleets began dropping out of faster-than-light travel around the battle zone. Not just Free Alliance ships, but vessels from across the galaxy. Some came to fight alongside humanity. Others came simply to witness what happened next. The largest surprise was the arrival of the Christek Collective. Not the small group that had joined the Free Alliance, but the entire Hivemind fleet. Thousands of crystalline ships arranged themselves between the Velthari and New Harmony. "Empress Zil-Ana," came the collective voice of the Christek. "The Hivemind has reached a decision. The old order is mathematically unsustainable. We choose evolution over stagnation." More ships arrived by the hour. The Zephyrian trade fleet, officially neutral but clearly positioned to protect the trade routes to New Harmony. Independent species that had hidden for centuries, now willing to fight for the right to remain free. Even some council species, their crews refusing to fire on the station that had become a symbol of hope. The Empress found herself commanding the largest fleet in galactic history, but facing an even larger coalition united not by force, but by choice. "Your Majesty," General Zixtha said quietly, "perhaps we should reconsider." "Never," the Empress snapped. "All ships fire on the station. Destroy it completely." But as her fleet prepared to attack, Captain Yoon made one final transmission. "People of the galaxy," her voice echoed on every frequency, reaching every world and every ship. "Today you have a choice. You can choose fear and submission, or you can choose hope and freedom. You can bow to those who claim to know what's best for you, or you can stand up and decide for yourselves. The choice is yours." Throughout the Velthari fleet, individual ships began powering down their weapons. Then entire squadrons stopped responding to orders. Crews that had spent their lives following commands were finally asking themselves whether those commands were worth following. Admiral Kim watched from New Harmony as the most powerful fleet ever assembled slowly fell apart. Ships broke formation and moved away from the battle zone. Some headed home. Others approached the station with requests to talk. The Empress's dreadnought found itself almost alone, surrounded by ships that had once been her allies but were now questioning everything they had been taught about power and authority. Your Majesty, came a transmission from one of her own captains. My crew votes to stand down. We will not fire on families and children. Mutiny, the Empress whispered, watching her empire crumble around her. No, replied Captain Yoon, her voice gentle but firm. Democracy. The final battle never happened. Instead, the largest fleet in galactic history became the largest peace conference in galactic history. Ships that had come to fight instead began talking. Enemies became negotiators. Ancient grudges were set aside in favor of building something new. The Empress's dreadnought finally departed alone, its commander unable to accept a galaxy where her absolute authority no longer existed. But she left behind a changed universe, one where species could choose their own paths. 5 years later, Ambassador Park Ji-woo walked through the gardens of New Harmony's newest section. The station had grown into a small city floating in space, home to millions of beings from across the galaxy. Children of dozens of species played together, while their parents worked on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The Galactic Council still existed, governing those species that preferred the security of hierarchy to the uncertainty of freedom, but it was no longer the only choice. The Free Alliance offered an alternative, growing stronger each year as more worlds chose cooperation over domination. Trade flourished between the two systems. Technology advanced faster than ever as ideas flowed freely between willing partners. Art and culture bloomed in ways that had been impossible when every species was isolated by council restrictions.